Welcome to Wildflower, from Wildflower, Rooted and Reckless, the podcast where writer and storyteller Angela Walker creates space to bloom in the wildest places, sharing stories of grit, grace, and growth.
Hello, and welcome to Wildflower from the Wildflower, Rooted and Reckless podcast. I am Angela Walker. Today is episode 8 of Wildflower. I feel like this episode should start, and I've said this before, I can't remember which episode I said it in, but I feel like this episode should start with, you're all probably wondering how I got here. And it flashes to me driving in my little green car that I got from downtown Phoenix from some shisty folks that may or may not have had stolen parts on it. I couldn't even get it properly registered. But anyway, driving my shisty car through the mountains, bawling my eyes out as I headed back home once again to my childhood bedroom. And Lord have mercy on my soul if my parents, I'm going to have to check in to see if there's a way I can nominate them for sainthood, because as I've gone through this and really highlighted these moments, talk about the example of God. It may not have always been comfortable, and it certainly was never convenient for anybody, but their door was always open. I always had a place to lay my head. I always had a place to call home. And for that, I am just eternally grateful. So that sentence started out funny and then it ended sad. Probably a lot like this episode. We had rented a Penske truck, my guy and I, right? Remember, he beat me up, got sober, had a conundrum. We decided to move to Arizona because he had ended up finishing whatever it was he needed to finish. And at this point, I had my daughter. She was 8 months old. And Cody would have been about 3.5 years old at this point. So we loaded up our Penske truck with what little belongings we had and a few things that people had given us. And we drove the 31 hours, 2,220 some miles to Mesa, Arizona. I went online, found an apartment, applied, and we were able to get into it. And all we had to do was make it there. So we pull up in our Penske truck, and right that moment, I learned about streets that are named for fruit and numbers and Main Street. Okay. You stay away from those places. You don't run apartments from those places. But I did, because I didn't know any better. So we moved into our apartment. It did not look anything like it did online. There were no burners on the stove. There were no shelves in the fridge. The drawers were broken that were in the fridge. There was like a 1-inch gap at the bottom of our front door. First off, we were definitely the minority. Okay. And there maybe was like, I don't know, one other person that spoke English, and that was the apartment manager, but she was greatly intoxicated. She was drunk all the time. So she doesn't really count. That wasn't really English. Yeah. Holy crap. Sheesh. So yeah, they told us where to park our Penske truck. We went ahead and parked. We had no microwave. We found out that the apartment had become available because a guy had shot his girl in there. It's terrible. It is freaking terrible. It was super scary, but I was so excited. I was just so excited. I didn't really understand like the dangers that could be lurking in these types of situations. You know, it was just different. It didn't really make a difference to me. I didn't have any real frame of reference for like what could occur or how dangerous this was. yeah, so we went to the nearby store to pick up a microwave because we didn't even have a microwave. We had very little money. So we went to a nearby store, we got a microwave, we got back to the apartment, and lo and behold, the police are there and they are writing me a parking ticket for where I parked the Penske. And the kicker about this is that I parked it exactly where the apartment manager told me to park it. So I still to this day don't understand why I got the ticket, and I was trying to tell her, but she wanted my license. And that is the moment that I realized that I had left my wallet on top of my car when we had left the store after putting the kids in it. Yeah. And then my phone rang, and it was this lovely elderly couple, and they had my wallet. They found it and they offered to bring it to me. So they did. They drove it to me. And then the gentleman proceeded to argue with the police officer about why she was ticketing me. And she ended up giving me a warning. And I didn't end up getting a ticket after all. So it was a roller coaster. It was a real freaking roller coaster. Okay. And guy was getting through it pretty well, I will say. Again, he was sober. He was sober. And that's all I asked, right? Was that he didn't drink. That's all I asked. So we showed up and his job fell through. This job that he had lined up fell through. I don't remember the excuses. I don't remember the reasoning. I just know that his lined up job fell through and all the contracts and stuff, everything fell through. Everything fell through. It just didn't work out. So we were looking through the papers feverishly because we needed income, and we found paper thrower, paper girl, paper boy, paper people, throwers of the papers in the middle of the night job. And I put in an application. So I got this job. We got this job as a partnership, and that was our main source of income at first. So we would literally, we had like no real furniture. I mean, the kids had cribs. Oh gosh, the place was swarming with cockroaches. Okay. Like I've never seen cockroaches come out during the day. And these things literally, like if you sat something on the cat, they were like small dogs. They were like tiny, tiny dogs that came out of the crevices, and they just were everywhere. But that's just not it. Okay. I'm from Florida. We got things. We've got gators and panthers and probably cougars. I don't know. Okay. Snakes, spiders, everything. We've got all the things. But there's one thing that we don't have that Arizona does. Scorpions. Freaking scorpions. That's next level. Okay. That's like yucky little spiders with pincers and a tail that stabs things. And they had scorpions. And they were in our apartment. So we told Drunky McDrunkerson, and she promised to have it sprayed. Fantastic. This is all within the first 72 hours of being in Arizona, of arriving in Arizona. Okay. I am so glad that I was young and dumb and vibrant. I don't know how in the world. It was God's grace. It was 110% God's grace. I just kept saying, this is fine. Thank you, Lord. I was just so happy to be there. I was so happy he was sober. I was so happy to be somewhere new. I felt so liberated and free. I mean, nothing was going to get me down. And then I pulled out of a gas station, and when I made a right, I turned into the middle lane, and immediately guy was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" There is a cop right there, which I thought was kind of weird why he cared so much about a cop, but sure enough, we got pulled over. And it was during this traffic stop I would learn a couple of things. First off and foremost, guy didn't finish any kind of program. Okay. We ran, I guess. He ran. I didn't know I was running. Has the statute of limitations over? How many years is that? It's definitely been a lot of years. Okay. Anyway, yeah. that's the moment that I found out there was a warrant for his arrest back in Florida because he had ran. There was still more stuff he had to do. Like he didn't finish anything. Yeah. Also, I learned that it doesn't matter if your kids are in the car, they're still going to arrest your significant other right there on site. Ay, ay, ay. Here's the irony of this. The reason they pulled me over was not because of my turn. The reason they pulled me over was because when Guy was like, "What are you doing? You turned into the wrong lane." His arm was up in the air and they thought that he was assaulting me. They thought that he was hitting me. And that is why they pulled me over. I can't. I can't. So yeah, that's why they pulled me over and they arrested him. And there I sat on the side of the road just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, in the middle of the night in my 1990 Buick LeSabre with my children strapped into their car seats in the back seat. I didn't know what to do. I just prayed. That's my go-to, man. I just started praying and I drove into work at the newspaper building place. And I told them what was going on, what had happened. And they said, "All right, wrap your papers." And so I just kept working. I filled my car and I ran our route. I knew our route. The only thing is we had an apartment route. When you have an apartment route, sometimes you have to throw papers up to like the third story. Okay. Like you got to really toss these papers. And also, again, this was in a interesting part of town. Okay. So you'd be out there throwing papers and all of a sudden there'd be like a spotlight on you and a helicopter above you because they were looking for people that were out committing crimes. And I'm just out there trying to deliver my papers. And during the day, I was on the phone with Florida trying to figure out if Guy was going to get extradited and I was going to be stranded in Arizona by myself and my 2 children forever. The thing is, when he took that agreement, when he like pled or took that agreement or whatever to do these programs, they dropped it to a misdemeanor. And what I learned was that at that time anyway, Arizona didn't extradite on a misdemeanor, but the catch was his case still had a felony case number because that's what he was originally charged with. I don't know anything deeper than that. Okay. If that is a rabbit hole you want to go down, then by all means, have fun with it. I don't know. I don't care. What I did know was that they couldn't extradite him. And so from there, I spent the next 48 hours trying to convince everybody of that and get everybody on the same page so that he could ultimately get released. In the meantime, sleep wasn't really going well at that time. I was pretty scared. I went to the laundromat. I had met some of our neighbors along the way. They were scary people. They were very scary people. And so at that point, I just kind of tried to stay locked in, except for then our maintenance guy showed up and he was going to spray for the bugs. Except he was a total weirdo pervert. And then he showed up again later in the night because something about an air conditioning or something, but we never said anything about an air conditioning. And then he showed up again, except he wanted to offer me a massage. It was so bad. And I went to the office manager, but she was too drunk to do anything. So yeah, it's fine. It was fine. It was scary, but it was fine. The one good thing out of all of this is the people that live directly across from us, they were a Mexican family. Killer tamales. Okay. They made incredible tamales and we lived on these tamales for a few days. Okay. Like we really didn't have much in the way of money. They sold these tamales for super cheap and they made dessert tamales, like sweet tamales. They made meat tamales, veggie tamales. So you can literally get like your whole deal, your protein, your vegetables, and your dessert in the form of tamales for super cheap. The kids loved them. I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to go grocery shopping and I didn't have anything to really cook with. except for the microwave we had bought. But yeah. The other thing was they were super, super kind. They were incredibly kind people. I really feel in my heart of hearts, there was obviously a language barrier that they were looking out for me. I don't think that they really knew what was going on, but obviously we moved in as this unit, as this family unit, and suddenly I was by myself. And I feel like I was very obviously terrified and tired. I was so tired. I actually had like a big baby gate pen set up in the middle of the living room, and I would sleep in that with the kids so that they could be playing and stuff so that I could sleep a little bit because I was throwing papers all night. And so I just needed a couple hours to get me through the day, because then during the day I was negotiating for the release of Guy. Arizona or bust. Oceanfront property, man. That oceanfront property. I was building strength and character though. So on night 2 of throwing papers by myself out in the south of Phoenix Mesa wilderness, I was at an apartment complex. And this one was interesting. You kind of like drove into the apartment complex a little bit and you got out and threw your papers right around there. And I locked my children in the car. Okay. I locked them in the car in the middle of the night. But don't worry, because there was people out in the middle of the night that were totally willing to help break into my car and seemed to be experts at it. And thankfully, though, it was this really nice lesbian lady. I thought she was a guy. She was actually a pretty hot guy. Turned out she was a lesbian lady. She was a good looking lesbian lady too. But anyway, she was great at breaking into my car. And I don't know what happened, but I ended up just pretty much pouring my heart and soul out to this lady. And she was probably my age, early 20s, mid 20s. And she was like, you know what? I think that they have apartments available here. You should apply. This is a much better place to live. It's safer. And it's right around the same price. You should definitely apply. A few other people were out and they were telling me how great it was and I should apply and all the fun things. So I did. The next day I went and applied, and they had actually already talked to the office manager there, and our application got approved really easily. They had some sort of promotions and we were able to get into this apartment. And literally that day I got the phone call that Guy was going to be released and I would need to be at such and such place to pick him up. I let the office manager of our apartments know that we were not going to be staying there anymore. And I drove to go pick Guy up. So I was there when he got out. We came right back, went right back to throwing papers, and we moved. He was very surprised, but pleasantly surprised. He was also the one to answer the door that night when the maintenance man came back in the middle of the night, not realizing that I had went to pick Guy up. So that all went great. Everything was fine. While I had to leave my Tamale family, who I will forever hold deeply in my heart with such gratefulness, things were looking up a little bit. So as we were throwing papers in my 1990 Buick, it finally took a crap. And I don't know, I'm not a mechanic. It needed mechanic work. It had mechanic stuff that needed to be happening to it. We had limped the car outside of a Walmart. And so while we were working to get that fixed, Guy ran into a man who worked for a road company, like asphalt company, and they were looking for a tack pot worker. And so Guy ended up applying and got that job. And I finished out throwing papers for a few weeks. I think I had to put in like a 2-week notice. So we were in our new apartment. He's still sober. He's upgraded his job. I've been able to retire from the newspaper throwing career. And we are starting to meet friends, make friends. There was a family that lived like catty corner and downstairs to us that had a little girl, and a little boy for that matter, but a little girl that was my daughter's age. And we became friends and life was good. Life was easy. Yeah. There were things along the way. I mean, there were challenges just like anybody else, but for the most part, it was pretty easy going. I remember one of my favorite memories of that era was that guy and the neighbor, the husband to the neighbor across the way, they built a pirate ship, an entire huge pirate ship to go around Cody's wheelchair, like huge pirate ship with like a sail and cobwebs. I mean, it was incredible. I wish phones had cameras like they do now back then. And I know that there's pictures. So if you live in the Mesa, Arizona area and you remember back in, oh gosh, Halloween of 2007, seeing a giant pirate ship with a pirate in a wheelchair, and you got a picture or a video of that, please send it to me. Find me. Social media, email, website, send it to me, please. Because I don't know that I ever even got one picture. But it was incredible. It was so incredible. And we had such a good time with that. It was just life. Played some video games at night. He worked. I took care of the kids. It was simple. He continued to progress at work. He got promoted. He made friends. We had friends. We loved to drive to Canyon Lake and play in the water, barbecue. For all intents and purposes, life was good. Life was really good. And then it was time for us to move from the apartment living. And we found a house. He worked in all kinds of different areas. So we found a house that was a little bit south of there, Queen Creek, if you're familiar at all. It's kind of a little more rural back then. I don't really know about now, but then it was. It was like an up and coming area. And so we found a great house and we moved into there. Again, we still had, arguments like any other couple would, but we were just able to communicate through them. So that is where we're going to leave this episode of Wildflower.
You've been listening to a Wildflower Rooted and Reckless podcast production with Angela Walker. Catch Wildflower drops on Tuesdays, Rooted on Wednesdays, and Reckless on Thursdays. Subscribe wherever you listen. Stay wild, stay rooted, stay reckless.